I want to thank everyone and welcome everyone to tonight. We are going to be going over the Tax Increment Financing TIF Purchase Rehab Program this evening. Tonight you'll learn, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Tonight, you'll learn more about the program from the director of the West Side Hub and Neighborhood Strategies, John Groney. You'll hear from our Neighborhood Lending Services team, Gordon Rice and Roberta Cozy. And you'll hear from our Director of Construction Services, Hector Gonzalez. I'm Alex Sierra, a Program Officer at NHS, and tonight's moderator. I just want to let everyone know that we've been muted and we are recording. Tonight's agenda covers a lot of ground. We're going to go over the TIF overview, where those districts are, the process for pre-approval, the application process, and a construction overview. Panelists will take questions after the pre-approval and application process, and then once again after the construction overview. We ask that you enter your program-related questions into the Q&A box. The chat is not available, so all questions are directed to Q&A box. Anything that is not addressed on this platform, we hope to, and we'll make every effort to circle back to people with answers to their more personalized questions. So with that, again, we'll make every attempt to answer and follow up. So if you don't hear an answer to your question live tonight, expect a follow-up soon. So then I just want to kind of start off the discussion tonight with the NHS mission. In case you don't know, Neighborhood Services of Chicago has been around for over 45 years. We exist to create opportunities for people to live in affordable homes, improve their lives, and strengthen their neighborhoods. This is our mission, and we do this by educating and preparing new homeowners for success, lending to help people buy, fix, and keep their homes, sustaining homeownership through foreclosure intervention services, and preserving, rehab, and investing in housing. We're building powerful and enduring community partnerships. And what all this means is your success is our success, and we're invested in this together. Again, if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A. And without further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce John Groney.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for sharing part of your evening with us. So NHS, as Alex stated, we're a not-for-profit organization, and, we're all about strengthening neighborhoods, and the tools we have are all around housing. And so, we help people both buy their first home and do it right with counseling, education, loan products, grant programs. And we also help current homeowners in their homes in terms of fixing up their homes, lowering their costs, so both helping people buy their first home, but also sustaining current homeowners. Okay. What we're talking about today is the TIF Purchase Rehab Program. Some of you might have heard of the TIF NIP program, which is home improvement grants for current homeowners in participating TIFs. This is not that. This is a grant program for people buying and renovating vacant homes in specific participating TIFs. In terms of what a TIF is, I'm not going to go in detail on that. What really matters is this is where this grant subsidy, or better said, this forgivable loan subsidy is coming from. And so I'm going to go over the districts where these grant funds are available. They're available for this particular nowhere else in the city other than these 5 participating TIF districts. Next slide. Okay, so there are, did I misspeak already? There's 6 participating TIF districts that have this grant subsidy available. And so if you're looking to buy in one of the communities, keep listening. If you have no desire to buy in any of these communities where this subsidy is available, I don't want you to waste too much of your time, although there'll still be lots of good information, right? So on the west side, It's the Midwest TIF has money for this program for people buying and rehabbing their first house. And that's mostly North Lawndale and bits of East and West Garfield. The Chicago Central Park TIF, we can go back to that. The Chicago Central Park TIF, you'll see is the southwest portion of Humboldt Park, or, you know, better said, West Humboldt Park. So between Grand down to the Kinsey Railroad track, between Kedzie and, you know, Harding. So that's the Chicago Central Park TIF. Next. The Midwest TIF, which is, once again, a good portion of North Lawndale, parts of both East and West Garfield, where if you're buying a home in one of these areas, this TIF has funds available for this program. You'll see, though, there is a little donut hole in the middle of that, and that's where Homan Square is excluded. Next. The Englewood Neighborhood TIF. So this is another district of the city. If you're buying a home in this area and you're, you know, it's a home in need of rehab, and, you know, doing a purchase rehab, this is another area of the city where it can be used. And you'll see from Garfield Boulevard south to Marquette Road, pretty good area. There is a small donut hole in the middle of that as well. Next. The 63rd and Ashland TIF. And once again, that is parts of Englewood, West Englewood. And once again, if the home you're buying is located here, this TIF has funds for this program. Next. 79th and Vincennes TIF. So this is parts of Auburn, Gresham, and Chatham and Greater Grand Crossing neighborhoods. And if the home you're looking at buying is in this area, this is also a TIF district that has funds for this program. And lastly, the 119th and Halsted TIF, which is, you know, parts of Roseland, Morgan Park, and the West Pullman neighborhoods. So once again, if the home you're looking at buying is located in this district also has funds for this TIF purchase rehab forgivable loan. All right, next screen. Okay, so who is general? I'm going to go over the general guidelines, and then we're going to have some insight from lending, and then I'm going to come back later. So don't worry if I skip over some things the first time through. Buyers must earn less than 150% of AMI. So for a family of two, if you earn more than $125,100, you do not qualify for this program. Okay, so there are income limits to be able to use this program. The second part of this is this program requires occupancy. The house you buy and renovate with this program, you have to live there. And there's a lien that's put on the property at closing. So at closing, when the seller's getting their money, the rehab funds are being put into a construction escrow account. They're putting two liens on the property, the lien from your first mortgage and a second lien that enforces the occupancy agreement. And depending on the size of the grant, the recapture period, the occupancy requirement is either 5 or 10 years. So far, all the participants have been 10 years because if the grant is less than $40,000, your purchase and rehab of your home, the total cost of both buying and renovating the home has to be below 160, and I don't see that happening. So you're looking at 10 years occupancy. So why are there partner lenders? Why can you only use Neighborhood Lending Services? So that's our lending division, or US Bank. Because other lending products like the FHA, the FHA 203K, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they will not accept mortgages that have a second lien on them. And because they won't accept that, Neighborhood Lending Services and US Bank, we're using our own money. We're using portfolio lending. We are going to, we're using our own funds to support this program. Next. So at this point,
Well,
now I'm
this
going
is
to come
for
back with more.
Roberta. Sorry.
Yeah. At this point, I'm going to pass it off to Roberta. Talk a little bit about the program. But number one, if you already own the home, this program's not for you. If you already bought a vacant home, it's too late. This program is not for you. This has to be used as part of a purchase rehab transaction. And it really, we've seen a lot of families that cannot afford to buy a move-in ready home in one of these neighborhoods because the move-in ready homes are priced at a premium. And so this is another way to buy the same kind of house, but doing a purchase rehab, getting in at a lower price point and being able to afford the same home, but you do have to go through the pain and suffering of 6 months of rehab and paying your rent and mortgage at the same time. But I'll give some examples at the end of families that did it very successfully and they're still in their homes, many years later. Roberta, I'm passing off to Roberta Cozy, one of our most experienced loan officers at NHS. Many of you on the call probably already know her, but passing it off to you, Roberta. And you are on mute, Roberta. Still on mute.
Ms. Cozy, if you're hearing us, if you can click on the microphone icon at the bottom left of your screen and hit that up arrow key, you should see the speaker settings. And I'm not sure if you're using a headset or your laptop speaker. If you're using a laptop speaker, click the Real Tech for both microphone and speaker. If the challenges continue, Mr. Groney, if you don't mind, probably in the next minute or so, if you could proceed with the slide just so not to hold up the audience.
Yeah, I can continue with the presentation and circle back with Roberta and she can tell me if I made any mistakes, but we're having a little technical difficulties. Surprise, surprise. I've always said someday computers will make our lives easier, but not yet today. Yet we're still not getting it. All right. So I'm going to give a little bit of, if everybody can hear me, I'm going to talk a little bit about the lending product. And once again, the reason I'm doing part of this presentation is that the pilot from this program occurred here in the Chicago Central Park TIF here in West Humboldt. We were able to help 12 families go through this process and buying rehab homes, and all of them are still living there today. So I have some experience with this. So the neighborhood lending services loan, very simple. It is a 3% down payment loan if you're buying a single family home, and it's a 5% down payment loan if you're buying a 2-unit. Okay. One of the good things about this is there is no PMI required. So you don't have to pay the PMI or the MIP like you would an FHA loan. Debt to income, what we use for the back end ratio, and that is, your house payment plus your other finance debt, back end ratio up to 43%, a minimum credit score of 620, and minimum savings of $10,000. I might have heard, is that Roberta?
Can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with no further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Roberta and she can go through and correct everything I stated incorrectly.
Thank you, John, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. But getting a disclaimer that NLS is the lending arm for NHS. John gave a great overview of the product, but I would like to speak about why you should use NLS as your lender. We offer a conventional, I don't think John said conventional, he just talked about our portfolio product, but it's a conventional product with no PMI. The debt to income is 43%. The minimum credit score is 620. The client's down payment for a single family is 3%, 5% for a 2-unit. But the percentage of your contribution is based on the total project. And there's a minimum savings of $10,000. Although we have $10,000 listed here, $10,000 isn't enough to participate in this program. And later in the presentation, I will show you why $10,000 is not enough. Besides your 3 and 5% down payment, there's outside closing costs, such as builder's risk insurance. Builder's risk insurance is an insurance that covers a vacant property under construction, and it's expensive, and you will have to pay for that outside of closing, along with your appraisal fee and application fee. Next. But the good thing is that you will receive 25% of the total project in the form of a TIF purchase rehab grant. Total project is listed here: purchase price, construction amount, 10% contingency, and closing costs. Next. If you're a visual person like myself, you have to see the numbers. So we're going to give you a snapshot of financing. A purchase price of $100,000, construction of $100,000, contingency of 10%, $10,000, estimated closing costs of $9,000. So the total project is $219,000. 25% of $219,000 is $54,000. So your grant amount would be $54,000. And if you can see, this is a scenario for a 2-unit property because it's 5% down. And as you can see, $10,550 is the amount of your down payment. So if you have less than $10,000 or $10,000 in your savings account, this scenario shows you that you don't have enough money to participate in this program. As John stated, you still would have to pay for your rent and mortgage at the exact same time. So you should have more than $10,000 sitting in your account. And if you were purchasing a single family home and 3%, your down payment would be $6,570. So if you only had $10,000 in your account for a single family home, you still would be okay, depending on the purchase price and the construction amount. But if you're purchasing a 2-unit property, you should have much more than $10,000. Next. You have to get a pre-approval in order to be a part of this program. You must work in your line of work for a minimum of 2 years. Please provide all your information to the loan originator at one time. It would make the process move smoother and quicker. Please provide 2 years of tax returns, 2 years of W-2s, 3 most recent pay stubs, 3 months of bank statements, a photo ID, and your Social Security card. Next. If you're self-employed, you must be self-employed for 2 full years, 2 calendar years, and provide 2 years of tax returns with all the schedules, 2 years of 1099, a year-to-date profit and loss statement. And there's other incomes next that you can use with this program, but you cannot use this income by itself to support this loan because the income will not support the loan. And the income that you can use is SSA, Social Security, SSI, disability, pension, and any other verifiable income. Your income must be verifiable. There's no such thing as I'm getting paid cash because we can't count cash. And you also can use child support as long as the child support will continue for 3 additional years. The next person to speak is Gordon Rice, Lending's Director.
If we can hold on right quick, Ms. Cozy, if you don't mind, we had a couple of questions that I think that you will be ideal to address. That's in the Q&A. Would that be
Sure.
okay?
Yes.
We have a question here. It says, what about a applicant who lost their job in the past 2 years? Will they be able to qualify for the program?
In order to qualify for financing, you must work in the same field for 2 consecutive years. So if you work in a position for 2 years and you're no longer there, and then you work in a different field, that's not 2 consecutive years. You would not be approved. You have to work 2 consecutive years in the same line of work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roberta,
Yes.
while we've got you, would you mind doing the portfolio program slides as well? Gordon is having some technical difficulties now.
Okay. So the name of this product is the Portfolio TIF Purchase Rehab Loan, and you must occupy the property. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer to participate in this program. However, you must live in the property. And your debt to income ratios, as I stated earlier, cannot exceed 40%. Next. The credit score must fall between 620 and 660. If it's under 620 and below 660, you will have a circumstance that the underwriter will have to take a look at your file and do manual underwriting. I'm sorry. I lost my thought for a moment. And our interest rate changes daily. So contact the loan originator to find out the current rate. Next. We offer fixed interest rates, no adjustable rates. Education, you must attend the home buyer education course. You can visit our website, the same website you use to register at www.nhschicago.org to register for a free home buyers webinar. And the landlord's training, if you're purchasing a 2-unit property, must. You have to register for that class, and you can do that by going to cic.org, I think, right, John? Isn't it org?
CICchicago.com.
Okay.
They are a not-for-profit, but their website is CICchicago.com.
And there's restriction far as the construction and the work that you can have on this property. You cannot change the structure of the property. There's no luxury items like granite countertops, hot tubs, whirlpools, etc. The main point is to get in the property, and you can always make upgrades at a later date. To start this program, if you want to apply for a pre-approval, please contact Gordon Rice, and his information is listed on the screen. And I think I'm passing this back to Hector.
To John, but thank you so much, Gordon, or thank you so much, Roberta. I appreciate you stepping in there.
John?
Okay, so with the program, the other thing there on the screen is kind of the contact information for the loan officers at US Bank. That is the other participating lender here, and you would be asking for the American Dream Rehab Program. And that is their loan product that can be used with this forgivable grant. Okay, let's go to the next. So just a reminder, when the TIF purchase rehab grant in the example that Roberta was using covers 25% of the total project cost, what covers the other 75% of the total project cost? Well, that is your first mortgage. And once again, because of the occupancy requirement and the second lien, that's why only these two lending products can be used that we've been able to find to date. Okay, so program criteria. The property that you're buying must be vacant. Okay, the property must be located in a participating designated TIF district. So those 6 TIF districts I showed, because there's more than 6 TIF districts in the city, but of course the only ones that have this funding available to assist people buying and rehabbing a vacant home is in these 6 TIF districts. The other thing is the property must be owner occupied within 6 months of closing. Okay, so from the time you close, you've already worked on and created a scope of work with the NHS construction specialist, and it's been approved by the lender. You've already chosen a contractor. You've got builder's risk insurance on the building while it's still vacant until you can move in and you transfer over to a regular homeowner's policy. And the idea is you've got to move in within 6 months of closing. And once again, I've been dealing with contractors for a long time, and I think they all go to the same marketing school. They'll see $100,000 worth of rehab and they'll say, oh, I could do it in 60 days. They can't do it in 60 days. On average, it's going to take about 6 months if you're talking about a lot of rehab. The other things, this is a City of Chicago funded program. So when someone applies for the grant, they're going to do a scofflaw check. So you either have to, the scofflaw check has to come back clear, and if it doesn't, you have to be in a repayment plan on that debt. And the second thing is the occupancy requirement. You have to live in the home for in most of these cases, it's going to be 10 years. You're committing to living in the home for 10 years. This forgivable grant is not forgiven over 10 years. There's not a burn off. It's not slowly reduced. No, it is only forgiven after you've lived in the home for 10 years. Okay, next slide. Okay, so TIF purchase rehab, once again, the forgivable loan covers 25% of the total project cost. And as Roberta reviewed with you, that is the acquisition cost. And I think she gave a great example. If, a buyer is found and signed a contract on a 2-unit property and they've signed a contract for $100,000 and clearly it needs work, the total project would be the rehab cost. And let's say the rehab comes in at 100,000, you get a scope of work, you bid it out to multiple contractors, you choose a contractor who says, I'm going to do all this work in this scope of work for $100,000. We always add a 10% contingency, an extra 10,000. Why? Experience. There's always something that comes up during a rehab project that, you open up the walls, it's not part of the contract, you need extra money to be able to complete the job. And then the vacant property must be in need of substantial rehab. So the definition in the ordinance is each unit has to need at least 10,000 in repairs. And so if you look at someone's just signed a contract and they go to their lender to apply for the loan, if you're buying a vacant property in need of substantial rehab, essentially you're applying for 2 loans instead of 1. You're applying for your first mortgage with your lender, once again, either US Bank or NLS, NHS's lending division, and you're applying for the TIF purchase rehab grant. And it's pretty much the same documents that you give to your loan officer for the loan. You're also going to submit that to the NHS grants department with the addition of the home inspection. You have to have done your own home inspection. That home inspection will help you get an idea of how much rehab is needed, and it also proves that the house is vacant. Once again, if the forgivable loan is less than 40,000, it's a 5-year commitment. It will only be forgiven after you've lived in the house 5 years and a day. If the grant is 40,000 or more, then you're committing to live in the house 10 years. And once again, if you sell before the recapture period, you have to repay the entire amount of the TIF loan. It's only forgiven after the recapture period, and up there's the word I was looking for, no proration. It's only forgiven after that year. Okay. Education requirements. And some folks do this beforehand, before they even find a property. Others, they go through all these workshops in the 90 days it takes to close between you signing contract and closing on a purchase rehab. What we're seeing is, we've got lots of first-time home buyers or home buyers that are pre-approved for purchase financing, and they're pre-approved for 200 or 220 or 250. And they're looking to buy a single family home or a 2-unit. And what they're finding is that all the homes that have already been bought and renovated by developers, well, they're on the market for 350, and you're being priced out of the neighborhood that you want to buy in. And once again, I think most homeowners or most home buyers are looking at a house that they can move right into. Okay. This is another way to buy in the neighborhood you want, in which you're, finding a house that is in need of rehab, has a higher or a lower purchase price. And with this purchase rehab, you can buy it for less. And once again, I'm going to see you after. Hector is going to go through the construction portion, but I think really,
No, John, this is for you still, just
okay.
The construction kind of guidelines.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So the NHS administers this grant for the city of Chicago, and as such, we're required to review the home inspection report that you paid for on the home you're looking to buy. And then NHS would perform an HQS, looking at the minimum housing quality standards, the minimum things that would be needed to be fixed for this house to qualify. We would order environmental clearance, a little complicated, but think, making sure it's not a historic property. There's no extra requirements on the home because it's a historic property. Various other things. And then a risk assessment for lead-based paint. So most, if a property was built before, 1975, it's got lead-based paint. So you got to be aware of that. NHS is responsible for the scope of work and will assist the buyer in getting multiple bids from licensed, insured contractors. The eligible homeowners chooses the contractor. What I like to say here is you can choose any contractor you want, but we can only tell you what contractors you cannot use. If they are not licensed, if they do not have liability insurance, if they don't have workman's comp. So if a worker gets injured, falls off the roof, they can't sue you and your homeowner's insurance. So you can choose the contract you want, but they have to be okayed by NHS having these minimum requirements. And then NHS would actually monitor the work, perform inspections as work is done, and process requests for disbursement. When someone buys a home with a purchase rehab loan, nothing is left to chance. Between the time you sign the contract to purchase, you apply for your 75% of the project cost with the 30-year fixed mortgage, you apply for the forgivable loan, You've already got a scope of work. You've bid it out to multiple contractors. You've chosen a contractor. So at closing, the seller gets their money. The rehab is put into a construction rehab account. You've got builder's risk insurance. So your building is insured until you can move in and switch it over to homeowners insurance. Of the 12 families that bought using this program, every single one of those purchase rehabs was completed, and they are living there now. And so the hard work, well, half of the hard work is leading up to the closing. And of course, the other half of the hard work is after the closing. And once again, the contractor does the work first and then gets reimbursed. When a bank is involved in a purchase rehab, we don't say, here's 50,000 to get started and we're going to hold our breath. No. Contractors are paid as work is completed, and we do that down to the very last step. Okay. So once again, in terms of the grant, once again, when you're sitting down, you've signed a purchase contract, you've done the home inspection, you're applying for a loan with your first mortgage lender, but you're also submitting a grant application to NHS grants department. And once again, very similar to what you're giving your loan officer. Proof of income, pay stubs, last 2 years of tax returns with W-2s or 1099s, copy of your ID. You got to pass the scofflaw check. You have to show a pre-approval from one of the participating lenders. The executed sales contract, you see the inspection report, and you have to show, last 3 months of bank statements. Why? Because it's verifying you have enough money for the down payment, but also there's only one closing when you do this. So the good thing about that is there's only one closing and you've got a fixed interest rate, and you're pretty much set. But if you're not living, on your family's couch for free, if you're still renting, you have to pay rent and the mortgage until you can move in, and probably going to take close to 6 months, if not 6 months. All right. Okay. And so this is just the overview of the families between 2013. This was the pilot where the city wanted to test to see if this helped families. There are two goals. One is eliminate vacant properties, but also create more affordable housing for first-time home buyers. And so between 2013 and 18, we closed 12 purchase rehab loans. Now, 11 of those 12s are all between 2015 and 18. 3 of the 12 deals took more than 18 months to finish. 9 were completed in less than 9 months. But once again, these were total gut rehabs. Want to talk about, none of those buyers had to borrow more than $200,000. Over here, and I could speak more to the west side, in the West Humboldt Park community, renovated 2 units. And think HGTV bathrooms and kitchens, they're going anywhere from $375 to $675. And I've got lots of families looking for homes, and they've got good income, good job histories, and they're pre-approved for $250 and they're not finding anything. This could be another way. And none of the families that bought could have afforded those higher prices. And so now I've changed the last name, but I want to talk a little bit about Miss Sparks. So Miss Sparks was one of these 12 buyers, and she lifelong resident here in West Humboldt Park. And she was pre-approved for purchase financing through NHS. And at the time, we had a vacant property for sale at a very reasonable price, a 2-unit. But she says, John, let me look around. I've got a buyer's real estate agent. I'm going to look all around. I want a 2-unit. I want it in this area, maybe a little further west, north, but pretty close. So let me keep looking. And she kept looking and looking, and she was looking for move-in ready homes. She couldn't find it. She couldn't find what she wanted. And she came back to us and says, John, is it still for sale? And Luckily enough, it was. And she was able, I think she was pre-approved for about 220. And she was able to do a purchase rehab on this home. And rehab took a while, but in the end, it all got done. And she borrowed, I think, right around 215. And if she were selling that house today, it would be worth $400,000. And so once again, I don't think many people, when they're looking at buying their first home, wake up and say, I would like to go through 6 months of rehab. No, but I think it's an incredibly useful tool if you're not finding what you want in the neighborhood you want to buy in. Up there it is. If you can't find move-in ready homes, I think it's a great resource to make this possible. Successful applicants, well, they got to be pre-approved through a program lender. And so if you're really trying to find out more and more information about the TIF purchase rehab, but you haven't been pre-approved through any lender, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, as they say. And you cannot use the program. You can't just use the grant to buy and rehab. It has to leverage your 30-year mortgage. Okay, so you got to be pre-approved through a program lender. Right now, the only lenders that can do this under the requirements of the second lien enforcing the occupancy requirement is Neighborhood Lending Services, which is our lending division, and US Bank. If more banks step up, then more banks will be included. And once again, can't find a move-in ready home in one of these 6 TIF areas. And the other thing is, once again, having extra savings left over after you buy your house, after you move in the house, is a wonderful thing. When someone closes on their house purchase and they say, John, what's one last piece of advice? What I always say is, well, you scrimped and saved for a down payment in the next 5 years after buying your home. I think you should save, up $20,000 again, so you have a cushion, your rainy day fund, because they have not invented a home that doesn't need repair someday. And then just being motivated and engaged in the process. I think it's a wonderful tool for those that were hoping to find out how to fix up a home you already own. Unfortunately, this program's not for that. There are occasions where a TIF has monies called the TIF-NIP program, where it's released all at a time and there's an application period for facade grants. But this is not this. This is a very specific program with fundings from only these 6 districts of the city. Let's see. And I believe I'm handing it off into the very capable hands of Hector Gonzalez.
Well, we've got a little bit of the application process here, but we can kind of move quickly through it.
Yeah, and for those, attend TIF purchase rehab information setting, I think you're kind of doing that right now. There will be more. Complete the TIF purchase rehab program eligibility application. And this is, once again, everything that your lender asks for you to qualify for your loan, we're going to ask for you, because it basically tells us, are you income eligible? Is your household income below 150% of the area median income? And, have you passed the scofflaw check from the city? Okay. Everybody's got I think we went through that.
Hey, John, Alex, can you do me a favor? Can you double back 2 slides? I just want to speak to something right quick. Go back 2 slides. One more. So everyone in attendance, step number 2, we kind of glossed over that rather quickly, saying to complete the TIF purchase rehab eligibility application. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A asking about application deadline. The application is currently active. We encourage all of you who are in attendance, or if you know of anyone who may be interested and or think they're eligible to participate, to visit us at our website at www.nhschicago.org. Once you are there, you'll click on the grants banner where you'll be able to see the program guidelines for this TIF purchase rehab offering, as well as complete the program application. It also indicates that you will be sent an email to create an NHS profile, and this is the point that I wanted to speak to. Understand that many of you on the call right now may already engage with NHS of Chicago, so that step may not be required for you if you already have a profile with neighborhood housing services. However, if you have never taken up any type of service with us at all, this being your first time engaging with us, we are going to systemically upload this application that's being referenced and create I'd like to call it like a skeleton profile for you in our system. As a result of that, with the email address that you provided in your application, you are going to receive a welcome email pretty much telling you to confirm your email address. We've all created accounts with Amazon and other online type of platforms. And the first thing that you have to do when you do that for the first time is you have to confirm with that platform that the email address that you entered is a working email. NHS is the same way. So when we import your application, you're going to get a welcome email that's going to ask you to, one, confirm your email address, which basically means to establish a unique password, something that you can remember that would give you access to what we call your dashboard. It is from there that you will then start uploading all of the required program documents to your online account that was set up on your behalf, that you created the unique password for. So I just wanted to make sure that I spoke to that step too, because this is very, very important. There's been a lot of slides presented. I don't believe, in my opinion, there's no important part other than step two. The last thing you want to do is to be an applicant who has taken the time to obtain the required pre-approval from a participating lender, working with a realtor of your choice, identify a property, attend these webinars, do the application, and then not upload the supporting documents that are required for you to move forward in the program. If you've missed that step, all of the work that you've done before that, will be all for naught. So that's why I wanted to make sure we circle back in, and I drove that step two home a little bit, because this is very important to start uploading the income requirement documents, the pre-approvals, everything that is going to be required for you to have a complete application will be required to be uploaded to NHS profile. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. If
Thank
we have
you,
those of you
Leroy.
who may not be tech savvy, we would have some slides, coming up shortly that will give you instructions on how you could potentially send the required documents to a team member of NHS, and we would do that action on your behalf. I digress.
Thanks, Leroy.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, and if we're picking up, and this is still before Hector, once again, you've been pre-approved. You've submitted all your information to make sure you're income eligible for the TIF purchase rehab through NHS, as Leroy was instructing. You have to hire, so you've got that, you've signed a contract, and you've got 5 days for your lawyer to look over it, and you have 5 days to get in a home inspector. And once all of that's done, you've got a pre-approval from participating lender. You have enough funds to close and be able to pay rent and mortgage for the 6 months where it could be under construction. The home inspection, they're going to reserve the funds, expecting that you should move towards closing. And let's see, there it is. And if those of you that like charts, this is pretty straightforward. Obtain the pre-approval from your lender. You get a signed contract on a vacant building in one of these participating TIFs. You get a home inspection. You've submitted all your documents. You've passed all the scofflaw checks. Everything looks good. At that point, you're going to start working with the NHS construction specialist with the end goal of getting a scope of work that's approved by NHS and your lender, and finding a contractor that meets all the requirements of both NHS and your lender. And then you can move on to purchase. If you ever see a property for sale, let's say you see a property sale for 80,000 and the MLS listing says cash buyers only. Well, the seller knows that a lender is not going to give you a loan of just 50,000 if you can't move in and immediately live in the home. You got to do a purchase rehab. So most sellers don't realize that there's buyers that can use purchase rehab financing and do it. The only difference is the seller needs to know that he can sell the building to someone other than cash investors. But the difference is it takes about 90 days to close on a purchase rehab instead of 5 days with a cash investor or 30 days with a cash investor. So at this point, this might be the third time I try to bring Hector in.
This is the pass off to Hector. You are correct, but we've got a number of questions that are relating to the TIF district. So I just want to go back up to those slides. Would you mind just reiterating what those districts are, John?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
And these are all available at the TIF PR webpage. So you can, look at those and zoom in on those details of where those addresses are. But here, I'll pass this on.
So let's start with, so there's 6 districts that have this funding. So if you find a property in the Chicago Central Park TIF, and this is mostly the western part of Humboldt Park, but that area goes as far down as Lake Street, you'll see there, east to Kedzie, west to Pulaski, as far north as Grand. It's got to be in that area. So that's the first TIF that has these funds available for those buying and rehabbing vacant properties through this program. The next TIF district is the Midwest TIF. Most people really identify the Midwest TIF as being a good part of North Lawndale minus Holman Square. But about 5 years ago, they expanded it. So there are parts of both East and West Garfield. You'll see in West Garfield, it goes north to Madison, all the way west to Leamington, down to the, expressway. It goes as far north as Washington Boulevard and east. So it's a pretty good map. If you Google the Midwest TIF, there's lots of programs. You can see these maps close up. And as you're searching for a home, and the real estate agent you're working with showing you homes, you can check and see if they're in these maps. The Englewood neighborhood TIF. Once again, it goes as far north as Garfield, beautiful Garfield Boulevard. As far south as Marquette Road, east to the Dan Ryan, west to Racine. For the most part, it kind of goes around the park there. And there is a little donut hole in the middle where you can't do it. But once again, if the property you find is vacant and need a rehab and located in one of these maps, by all means, explore this program. The 63rd and Ashland TIF, and this is in the West Englewood neighborhood. And so you'll see, okay, we're gonna have to make this map bigger because my eyes aren't as young as they used. There we go. So that's Ashland on the east, and it looks like it's going to Hamilton, which is about 3 blocks west of Damon. So Ashland to Hamilton. Once again, that's about 3 blocks west of Damon. North to, looks like the railroad, that's just south of, what is that, 57th Street, 58th Street, and south to 65th Street. So a nice chunk of area there as well. So yeah, the map looks, it's a bigger area than you think. It looks kind of small on the initial map. 79th and Vincennes tip, if you're looking in this area. So parts of Auburn, Gresham, and Chatham, and Greater Grand Crossing. And, you know, I would just definitely suggest, I don't know if I can do the outlines of all the streets there, because that's kind of a puzzle. And then the 119th and Halsted TIF. I mean, that's parts of Roseland, Morgan Park, West Pullman, you know, 118th Street South there. A lot of nice single family homes and 2 units there. And so once again, people are choosing to use this program, a TIF purchase rehab, you know, doing a purchase rehab instead of purchasing a ready built property. People are doing it for a reason, because developers, once the house is move-in ready, are demanding a premium. Housing prices are high, interest rates are high. And so this is another tool in your home buyer toolbox.
Thank you, John. We'll let you pass it to Hector now.
I've been so anxious to pass it to Hector. But I would like to pass it to the more than capable hands of Hector Gonzalez. That's been doing this for a long time and was involved in many of the pilot projects. So he brings to the table a wealth of information, and he's a nice guy.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I just want to cover some information on the construction process. So you've gone through your application process, you've selected a home, and you submitted an inspection report. And my department has reviewed that inspection report, and we schedule an appointment. I assign a construction specialist. That construction specialist will schedule an appointment to meet you at the property and do a walkthrough to conduct a housing quality standard inspection. And as John pointed out, housing quality standards is basically the minimum requirements for habitability of the property. So we do a complete assessment of property conditions and identify deficiencies that include health and safety along with the housing quality standards. An environmental clearance report is submitted, and that review is done for brownfields, any environmental contaminants, and historical features of a property. And if anything comes back for clarifications due to historical preservations, you will be informed of those changes and requirements. I can tell you that the rehab may be considerable to historical properties, depending on the condition, the material of the property, whether if it's a gray stone or a frame or intricate components of the property that would need to be preserved. You won't be able to change those historical features. So that would be a strict requirement to preserve any features. And again, depending on the conditions, it may not be feasible to purchase that property. A lead risk assessment for any home that was built prior to 1978 contains lead and paint. And although there may not be any peeling paint, you will be disturbing painted components of the property during your rehab. And so that creates a lead hazard that requires lead safe work practices. We have minimum requirements for contractors. And so You can use any contractor of your choice as long as they meet our minimum requirements. And those are having a general contractor's license issued by the city of Chicago, a certificate of insurance showing a minimum of $1 million in general liability, $100,000 in workers' compensation. They must also have a certificate training them on how to follow lead safe work practices. Because as I stated, homes built prior to 1978 contain lead and paint, and disturbing those painted surfaces will create lead hazards. And so that certification is an EPA certification, and it's called the Renovate, Repair, and Paint certification. It's a one-day training, and any contractor can obtain it. As a matter of fact, is a requirement for contractors to have those minimum credentials. Again, we stated that NHS or lender of your choice will create a rehab escrow account, so no construction dollars go to you or the contractor, and that will remain in that escrow. We don't provide money up front to any contractor, so contractor of your choice must start the job with their own funds, and then get progress payments as they complete the rehab. So progress payments, meaning that you can get up to 5 payments during the entire construction process. NHS will write the scope of work. So we conduct that initial assessment with you. We consult with you about your rehab requirements, and we also provide you with guidance on the deficiencies that we identify. We assist you in prioritizing repairs. So we separate your wish list versus those required repairs that would allow you to occupy the property. Next slide. The amount of rehab, of course, has to be at least $10,000. That's really nothing. You can spend that in a bathroom, and that's per unit. So that is the minimum amount of rehab that is required on the home that you identify and want to purchase. You select a contractor through a bidding process. The scope of work will assist in obtaining comparable bids. If you allow contractors to just come out and provide you bids, you can invite 3 contractors, and I can guarantee you that you will get 3 separate, uncomparable bids. And that's the purpose of writing the scope of work. That scope of work will be reviewed with you by the construction specialist. You will approve that scope of work to go out to bid to the contractors of your choice. Architects. Now, I need to caution you on coming into a purchase rehab under this program with the expectation that you're going to create a palace out of a 100-year-old vacant home. That's going to be impossible with this program. That requires extensive design and decision making. It's going to take a great deal of time. I can tell you that sometimes it may take a year to design, draw, and get the permits for complete purchase rehab. So preparing yourself to buy a vacant property and do the minimum required to occupy that property, and as Roberta stated, saving your great expectations of creating a palace can be done at a later date. The key is for this program is to identify a property, do the minimum required repairs to the property, maintain the property and save money so that then you can further expand the property, because it takes a great deal of time. Go ahead, next slide. So once you close, we've identified a contractor, you selected a contractor to do the rehab, then that package is sent to your lender. The appraisal is done based on the scope of work, so the improvements that you will be doing after closing. So no repairs could begin until after you close on the property. Once you closed on the property, you will inform the construction specialist and the contractor, and then a walkthrough, a pre-construction walkthrough will be scheduled. At that walkthrough, you will review the scope of work item by item to ensure that everyone understands the scope and understands the work. You will sign the contract documents that consist of general conditions, an escrow agreement, and a notice to proceed. Once permits are obtained, if necessary, which probably is very probable, then the work can begin. Once the work begins, the construction specialists and the homeowner will periodically do inspections on the progress of the work and do inspections when payouts are requested by the contractor. Once you go through that entire process, we continue it and we smoothly but surely get to the end of construction. A final inspection is conducted and all the final documents are signed. Now you may be able to occupy, if it's a 2-unit, you may prioritize your work to get 1 unit occupy ready so that you can move in while the 2nd unit is being finished. That's an option. If it's a single family home and you need extensive work on it, then you're going to need a place to stay while the construction is being done. So preparation for a construction process is very necessary, and we cover this in the Rehab Ready Part 1 and 2, where we guide you through the process of hiring contractors, working with contractors, identifying contractors, and getting through the bidding process and the construction process. Once everything is done and everything is closed out, contractor is paid out, final waivers of liens are collected, you're ready to go. Did I cover all this? Did we go backwards?
No, I think we just had some, duplication of materials because we thought it was important for people to hear more than once.
Sure. So it's very important that you understand that when you're buying a vacant property, I'll just touch a little bit on this because we talked about the 10% contingency. There's always going to be unforeseen conditions because we can't see through walls and we can't see underground. No one thinks about the water line or the drainage that runs under the house. Vacant properties, when they're vacant for a number of years, will have problems with the drainage. That drainage dries out and roots take over. So inspection by a plumber with a camera scope is highly recommended for the drainage lines. And some vacant properties may not have the utilities on where you can run the water, test the electrical, and see how those components work. So you have to make some assumptions based on the visual inspection. Your home inspector may identify some of those issues. The construction specialist will identify issues as well. And with both the home inspection report that you hire, that is yours, the home inspector, is for you, the construction specialist is for the lender. And so with both professionals assisting you through the process, they can provide recommendations on those components that they identify as critical components needing critical repairs. And with that, I'll turn it back over to or answer any questions anyone may have.
I will take it from here then. Hector, I'll find a couple of questions for the panelists. If you've got questions at this point, please put them in the Q&A box.
Since Hector is primed up and speaking, I had a question for him that was in the chat box. Participant asked if they had a concern or problem with the selected contractor, are they able to change contractors?
Absolutely, that's your contractor. The contract is between you and the contractor. If you run into issues with a contractor and you can't resolve it, then termination of the contractor would be the first step. However, keep in mind that if you've done work already with the contractor will be required to be paid for what they've done up to date. And that includes any materials that have been purchased and installed in the property. Why? Because you have a contract with that contract. The contractor can, if you refuse to pay the contractor for any reason whatsoever, the construction specialist will do an assessment of the work in place and provide recommendations on payments to the contractor. Because if you don't pay the contractor can file a mechanics lien against you and the property. And that will drag you through court and you will have a nightmare. So finding a contractor that you're comfortable working with, doing your due diligence of researching that company and checking with their references is very important prior to selecting a contract. And again, in our Rehab Ready webinar, part 1 and 2, we get into specific details on finding and selecting contractors.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank
One
you.
final question for you. What, if anything, can be repaired on the exterior of the property with this grant?
Yes, so there's no limit to the repairs that can be done, and I can guarantee you that you're going to need exterior repairs on a vacant property. Properties that have been vacant through a number of seasons go through a freeze and thaw process that wreak havoc on the structure of the property and components of the property. So some properties are not winterized, meaning that the water in the water lines or boiler systems may not have been drained. And so that will freeze and pop and break pipes. And once you turn on the water and pressurize the systems of boilers, you're going to find all the leaks.
Thank you. Is there a max or a cap price for the purchase and rehab costs?
So there is not. It's 25% of the total project cost. And, you know, the real cap is what you can afford with a household income below 150% of the AMI. But there is not a maximum grant amount. It's 25% of the total project cost of buying and renovating this home.
Thank you. And when you say household, can you please elaborate on that?
From an
Like
income standpoint?
Yes, from an income standpoint, who's considered, whose income is considered for the household income?
Roberta, would that be you?
Yes. Household income is everyone in the household with the income. Even if you have a minor child working at Dunkin' Donut part-time, that's considered household income. So we count the household income and family size to determine the grant amount. And to answer your question about a cap on the program, it's based on your affordability. How much can you afford is the cap. There's no red number to say, oh, if you can't exceed 300,000, there's no magical number, but it is based on that 43%, if you're going to use NLS as your lender, based on that 43% debt to income ratios, that will be your cap. It's based on your affordability.
Thank you, Roberta.
You're
And
welcome.
then Roberta, I think you're good for this question. Someone asked, what if in 3 or 4 years interest rates go down? Can I refinance?
Of course you can, but you should only refinance if you're refinancing for 1 full point going down. But remember that the TIF Purchase Rehab Grant and any other grants that you may receive from NLS is associated with the property. So there's a lien on the property. So if you're refinancing for rate and term, meaning to bring your interest rate down, yes, you can refinance. And yes, we will subordinate our position so you can refinance. Now,
Unless-
if you're refinancing to take out cash, we will not subordinate our position. And the money, I believe, is paid back, right, John? Prorate?
Yeah, you got to pay it off in full.
Yeah. So if you're
Yeah.
refinancing and take cash out, it's not a good idea. But if you're refinancing for rate and term, yes, we will assist you by subordinating our position to allow you to take that interest rate to lower your interest, to lower your monthly payment.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Then we've got a couple of questions relating to the construction. How long after purchase do we have to make the specific modifications?
Right after closing. You would start and you have 6 months to complete the rehab and occupy the property.
And there
Thank
was a
you.
question about what if the construction is delayed and it goes over the 6 months? That would be an accommodation between you and your lender,
Right,
is I think the
And-
best way to put that.
Right. and so it's
For other
important. That's why it's important that you prepare for the rehab, because you're going to make a lot of choices on finishing products, cabinets, trim, paint, so forth and so on. And so delays usually are when you can't decide on what you want. You're shopping online and it takes 12 weeks for the product to be delivered. And then when it's delivered, it's damaged. So you got to send it back. Now you've got 24 weeks delayed. So you really have to plan your rehab carefully because we have supply chain issues also. And shopping online is going to considerably delay a project. So you don't want to drag a project 2 years. It's going to, your dream home is going to become a nightmare, and you probably won't buy another home. So preparation is the key, knowing what you want and being realistic about what you can afford and what's out there. What can you buy? What can you get your hands on today versus next month?
So with that in mind, are participants able to convert a 2-unit into a single family home?
No.
No.
That requires architectural drawings. You're affecting your appraisal value. You're reducing the number of bedrooms in the home. This is not the program for that.
Right. And think about that from a seller's point of view. you've signed a contract with the seller, and you've notified them it's going to take 90 days to close. And it's important. I had a question, I think it is important that they know from the get-go when they sign a contract, it's going to take 90 days to close, because you have to develop the scope of work, bid it out, choose a contractor, all before closing.
There's no scope in a rehab like that. You have to hire an architect,
Right.
and the architect has to draw those plans. Again, that can take up to a year.
Yep. And no seller is going to wait that long, and no lender is going to finance architectural fees. It's just not possible.
Thank you. Can you use a 2-unit as a rental unit after the rehab is complete with the owner occupying 1 unit? Or does the owner have to occupy both units?
No, 1 unit, and you can rent out the 2nd or 3rd unit.
Yeah. As long as you're living in 1 unit, that's fine. And that's one of the advantages of a 2-unit that a lot of people like. A lot of people want that extra income, or a parent or a child living in the other unit paying rent. Although if you go through landlord training, they'll tell you not to rent to family, but that's another story. But yes, of course, you would occupy 1 unit, and you could leave the other unit vacant. You could rent it out. It's your home.
Is it possible to finish a basement in a 2-unit?
Again, you want to work with the natural design of the property. You will be adding a 3rd unit, which requires architectural drawings, minimum zoning requirements. Again, you can, but this is not the program for that. If you buy a 2-unit, that's what you're buying, and that's what you're rehabbing, the 2-unit, and you're going to have an unfinished basement. You can plan your renovation to add a 3rd unit at a later date. I'm not saying it can't be done. This is not the program for that type of rehab.
And if the purchase has a coach house or adjacent property?
If it has a coach house, that's considered another unit. So if you have a 2-flat with a coach house, you may be able to repair the coach house. It all depends on the condition of the coach house, and that will be determined in the initial site visit.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have answered the majority of the questions here, and we are right on schedule. So this concludes tonight's town hall. We hope it was informative and helpful in helping you decide if TIF PR is right for you. We want to thank our panelists and thank our audience for sticking with us. We look forward to working with you. If you have any questions, additional questions, you can email us at tifprassistance@nhschicago.org. You can find the application and more information, including all of the TIF districts, at nhschicago.org/TIFPR. And for more information on the TIFs in general, you can visit the City of Chicago website. So with that, I thank you once again and wish you all a very good night. The recording for this webinar will be sent to people who registered and then will be posted at the NHS website when it's available. Again, many thanks. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Good night. Thank you.